So this is my plugin, the HMD Black Vortex, which is a time-based effect / spatial plugin that allows you to make things feel more forward in your mix or further back in your mix, manipulating the early reflections. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to play this and let you hear what it sounds like. Right now I have 3 elements loaded up: a guitar, hats, and drums. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bypass this back and forth and give you an idea of what it sounds like. Basically what I did was I used Black Vortex to decide what I wanted more forward and what I wanted further back in the mix. Let's hear what that sounds like. Without first. So to me, I'm feeling a sensation of a 3D'ing or layering of the sound. To me, the drums feel a little bit more forward, the hi-hats feel behind that, and then the guitar feels a little further behind that, creating this 3D layer of sound and creating that depth. Not only with manipulating the early reflections to push things further back, but also pushing things forward in the mix and giving me an even greater sensation of depth. Now I'm gonna go into the nitty gritty of the plugin in the whole 9, but for the most part, let me just show you what it sounds like and then we'll get into the actual parameters towards the latter part of this video. So on drums, I pushed it a little bit more forward. Let's solo it and let's listen to what that sounds like as we have that. So without first, and remember, I pushed the drums a little bit more forward. So to me, the drums have a little bit more of that center focus and things feel a little bit more pushed forward. Now, the beautiful thing about the plugin is we're only manipulating the mid channel, ignoring the sides. And I'll explain that a little later. But you can use this on anything you want, even vocals, to make them feel a little bit more forward in the mix or whatever element you feel you want to be more of a center focus kind of element. Okay, the next thing I have here is the hi-hat. And with the hi-hat, I took the plugin and I pushed things just a little further back. I wanted the hi-hats to live a little bit behind the actual drum sound, but let's listen to what that organically just sounds like as we bypass it back and forth. I want you to pay attention to the sense of space that the actual hi-hats get and those early reflections that is playing on your ear. Without first. Subtle, but super effective. I can hear and feel a sense of space on the hi-hats that is giving me the impression that things are a little bit further back in the mix. If I actually play this along with the actual drum sound and bypass the hi-hat back and forth, take a listen to what it sounds like as far as where the position of the hi-hats kind of fall within listening to the drums. So without first, you're gonna notice probably that the hi-hats feel a little bit more forward, and then when I put it on, you're probably gonna notice that the hi-hats feel like it falls back a little bit in the mix. So, listening to the drum and hat relationship. So really fun. It kind of takes the hi-hats and puts them in a space and puts them a little bit further behind the actual drum sound by manipulating those early reflections. And you can be very creative with it. I made it so that you can be subtle as you want, but you can also exaggerate things if you wanted as well, which I'll show you in a second. Up here, we have the guitar sound, and this is the furthest thing in the mix as far as what I push back the most. Take a listen to what it actually sounds like before and then after. You can clearly see that I pushed it way back in the mix. Without first. fun. And this is us exaggerating the sound and pushing things much, much further back in the mix and giving me that perception of depth by manipulating, once again, those early reflections, bringing down that direct signal, but intensifying the early reflections as we move the slider further back. Now, like I said, I'm gonna get into the nitty gritty of the plugin later, but for right now, let's just keep using examples and showing you what it sounds like. Okay. So that is what it sounds like on guitars, hats, and just kind of like an entire mix for the most part when it comes to different elements as far as moving things front to back. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna open up another element. And this is probably one of my favorite things to actually use the plugin for, and that is the relationship between vocals and background vocals. So when I say that, I'm talking about leads and actual background vocals, and kind of creating a little bit of separation between the two, in a sense of making a background vocal or background vocals in its totality feeling a little bit behind the actual lead vocal, so that lead vocal keeps that prominence and stays forward. But now you have this layer and depth to the actual vocal sound in itself by taking the background vocals and making it feel and giving it the impression that is a little further back behind it, allowing one for the vocal as far as the lead to feel like the prominent thing in the actual mix as far as the vocal sound, and then the background feeling like a support system for it. So let's try that out right now. So basically this is it on my actual backgrounds. And what I'll do is I'll put it literally to the factory default, like put it like right to the bottom of what it sounds like. And now what I'm gonna do is I am going to take this and I am going to push it further back in the actual sound. Before I do that though, let's just take a listen to what it sounds like. So listen to this closely.
You heal the sick. You raise the dead.
You help the blind man see.
You help the blind man see.
You are mighty to me.
You are mighty to me.
Say you picked me up.
So you hear that sound. Now, let's take the actual background vocals as far as that choir sound is concerned and make it feel a little further back behind the actual lead vocal.
You heal the sick.
And you raise the dead.
You raise the dead.
You help the blind man see.
You help the blind man see.
You are mighty to me.
You are mighty to me.
Say you picked me up.
You picked me up.
And you turned me around.
You turned me around.
You placed my feet.
You placed my feet
on higher ground.
So you can hear in the background vocal sound that when I'm bypassing it back and forth and when it's engaged, the background vocals or the choir sound just feels a little bit further back behind the lead vocal. And the lead vocal actually feels and gives me this sense of depth in a sense of, hey, I am the forward piece and the choir is now supporting me. And granted, you can actually go into the plugin and turn up and compensate for that volume if you wanted to and turn up the choir sound, making it sound even bigger now with the early reflections being manipulated in this space. So what I'll do is this. Let's solo the background vocals and let's listen to what it sounds like with us pushing it back as far as just hearing what it organically sounds like. Let's put it back to its nominal level. Let's listen to this.
You heal the sick. You raise the dead. You help the blind man see. You are mighty to me. You picked me up. You turned me around. You placed my feet on higher ground. You heal the sick. You raise the dead. You help the blind man see. You are mighty to me.
Really, really cool sound. And that was me exaggerating the effects to give you the impression. You did also notice that going from dimension 1 to dimension 3 had two different sounds, which I'm going to explain to you in a second. But nonetheless, you can get the impression and understand how to create a little bit of depth within the sound using that front to back slider as far as pushing things further back, manipulating the early reflections. Please keep that in mind. Now, the very last thing I'm gonna show you with this actual example is I'm gonna go to the lead vocal. I'm gonna actually take off this actual plugin here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the lead vocal. And remember I told you that you can also make things feel more forward in the mix, and we're gonna try this with the lead. So I'm gonna push the lead vocal and make the lead vocal feel a little bit more forward in the entire soundscape. So let's try that right now.
You and you raised the dead. You helped the blind man see. You were mighty to me. Say you picked me up and you turned me around. You placed my feet.
Now, let's hear that within the mix, and I'm gonna bring it back down. I wanted you to hear it by itself, and now let's play that within the context of the actual background vocals. So we're gonna push the lead vocal more forward within the mix.
You heal the sick.
And you raise the dead.
You raise the dead.
You help the blind man see.
You help the blind man see.
You were mighty to me.
You are mighty to me.
Say you picked me up.
You picked me up.
And you turned me around.
You turned me around.
You placed my feet.
You placed my feet on higher ground.
So you can hear when I push it forward, the lead vocal just feels a lot more forward and present inside the entire scheme of the music. Now, I did mention that you can use this actual plugin in a very subtle way, but then there's also a way to be creative. I wanted to make sure that although the plugin is, basically a utility for pushing things further and back and further forward, I also wanted it to feel like a creative tool as well, low latency as possible as well, so that you can play with it in your production. What I mean by that is, for instance, let's take this lead vocal and let's open up this 80s preset is on it, these 80s vocal preset, and see what that sounds like. And this is more of a creative effect for it to make it feel really huge and more like that 80s kind of sound. Check this out.
You and you raised the dead. You helped the blind man see. You were mighty to me. Say you picked me up and you turned me around. You placed my feet on higher ground.
Really fun. You can be as creative as you want with the actual plugin. Now, the very last example that I'm gonna show you is this one in particular, and it's an entire mix. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to slap the HMD Black Hole on an entire mix as far as the mix bus. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna push the mix just a little bit more forward, giving you the perception of more perceived loudness as well, and just kind of making the mix in general just feel more upfront and in your face. Pay attention to the kick, the bass, the vocals, real center focus type elements, and notice how much they get pushed to the front of the mix in the sound. Check this out.
I wanna be there, oh, when there's no one else to show. I'll be there, when you feel like no one else would care. I'll be there, catch you where you fall. I wanna be there, there. I wanna be there, I wanna be there, oh, when there's no one else to show. I'll be there, when you feel like no one else would care. I'll be there, catch you where you fall. I wanna be there, there.
So also, please don't judge me. It's not an actual full mix, just a rough example of a song. But nonetheless, you can feel that weight and presence just kind of come forward within the mix. And it's super fun to use it that way for buses or anything that you're trying to get more of a forward sound out of. Now, shout out to my guy, Paul. You can get crazy with it and use it on the backside as far as creating a little 3D dimension on the stereo mix bus. But I'm not recommending it. Try it for yourself. And I'm really excited to see how y'all use it as well. Now, with that being said, I'm going to explain a few of the parameters and how this plugin actually works and kind of give you an example or idea of what is happening within the whole thing. So, the front to back slider. Long story short, like I told you, Moving the actual slider further back is allowing you to make things feel further back in the mix, manipulating the early reflections. What's occurring is the direct signal is coming down as you back off, and the early reflections are getting louder and louder as you actually pull back, giving you that sense and perception of space. Think about it like this. When you have an actual room mic in your room, right? And you go further and further and further and further and further back from that microphone, you're hearing less of that direct signal and you're hearing more of those early reflections intensified. So think about it like a room mic, and you're basically taking this room mic front to back, and basically you're backing up. And as you're backing up, you're getting less of the direct signal, and things are giving you the perception of being further away from the sound source. So this is kind of how we did it within the plugin. Once again, manipulating those early reflections to give you the sensation of depth and space within the actual mix. Moving it forward with the slider. When you move things forward with the slider, what you're doing is not affecting any of the early reflections and things of that nature, but instead what you're doing is you're only affecting the mid channel, ignoring the side information of the actual sound and pushing that forward, giving you the perception of things feeling more upfront and in your face within the mix. Nothing crazy about that, just simply put, that is literally what it's doing. So when you're moving the forward slider forward, it's not affecting the early reflections, but when you're moving it back, that is manipulating the early reflections to give you that sense of depth. One thing that I need you to know about this plugin, when it comes to the dimensions do not correlate with moving the plugin or the slider forward. It only correlates or is in use when you're actually moving it backwards. So when you're moving the plugin forward, as far as the forward slider, you're only manipulating the actual forward mid-channel of the sound and not the early reflections. And dimensions is not in use for that particular function. What are the dimensions? Long story short, dimension 1 is kind of like a medium kind of space between the 3 elements that you have here. 2 is a little bit of a shorter, smaller kind of space, which I love for hi-hats, percussions, and drum elements that I don't want to have this exaggerated kind of spacious sound, but instead just a little bit more liveliness and giving me this perception that it is in a little bit of a space and feeling a little further back. Shortest actual element or shortest function. And then 3 is the more exaggerated, larger space that is giving me those kind of like really depthy kind of sounds and more creative style as well if I wanted to go that way. 1 is kind of like a median in between the 2. Not as short or small as 2, but not as long as 3, but instead a median in the middle. And then the very last thing, which is self-explanatory, is the actual up-down slider, which is literally just volume. When you take something and you push it forward or back in a mix and you want to compensate for that volume that you either lost or gained, you can take that slider and push it up or down. Super self-explanatory. And then the very last thing is obviously the preset window, which we've created a few presets in here to get you started. 3D feeling is probably one of my favorite. I take it and use it and put it on different sounds to give me a little bit more of a 3-dimensionality to a sound when I actually call for it. And that is the HMD Black Vortex. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description for it if you're interested. Please, if you have any questions, comments, or concern, please let me know. I'd love to hear how you're using it, what you think of it, and also if you have any questions, please, I'd love to answer them. I'll be in the comment section for sure with this one, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for supporting our small plugin company as far as HMD, helpmedevon.com. You can go grab it right now. And yeah, hope you enjoyed, and until next time, y'all.